Chapter 44:15. Blood Heaven is dead. This giant arm figure who once stood at the peak of the universe and was the leader of one of the forces, died in the hands of Jian Wushuang. Above the starry sky, Jian Wushou stood with his hands on his back, black hair flying all over his eyes, the flames in his eyes, and his cool and stern face indifferent. Countless stars were stepped under him, as if the Ling Chen was the master of the stars. For a moment, everyone in the entire asteroid group opened their mouths, and there was no sound. Blood Heaven Supreme ruled them for nearly 1,000 chaos periods, and their fear of Blood Heaven Supreme has been imprinted in their bones. They never thought that one day the Supreme Bloody Heaven would fall into the hands of others. All this came too suddenly, like a dream, giving a sense of unreality. Until a long time later, after Jian Wushuang stepped on the sky and left, they slowly returned to God, and then looked at each other, boiling instantly, falling down. Blood Sky Supreme, this optimistic superstar, has fallen down. It seems that Jian Wushuang has broken through the Supreme now. I'm afraid to clear the old accounts one by one. Yes, if I guessed it right, Blood God Supreme is just the beginning. At the beginning, the 6 forces of Jian Wushuang were hunted down, and none of them would be miss. It seems that something big is going on in the universe. Countless people think of this, and their hearts are trembling. Immediately afterwards, the news that Jian Wushuang came out to kill the Blood Heaven Supreme spread at an extremely fast speed and swept the entire universe. Immediately, there was an uproar in the universe as if a bombshell had been dropped. Temple of Life, Supreme Temple. Ha ha ha, boy, I knew he could succeed. In the hall that has always been somber, there was a loud laughter of bleeding waves. In the early hours of this morning, news spread into the Temple of Life, the sword unparalleled in the asteroid group. One sword killed the Lord of the Blood Temple, the top supreme blood god, and the whole universe shook. The King of 9 Robbers, the Supreme Axe, and the core members of the Sword Alliance all sat on both sides, and they also smiled when they heard the words. Jian Wushuang, if you don't do it, you will be shocked when you do it. King Zhoujia shook his head and said that his expression was helpless and he was happy for Jian Wushuang. Blood Sky Supreme is among the top, and they are all outstanding. This place will be tricky to deal with, and it is unexpected that Jian Wushuang can already kill him with his own strength. The giant axe sighed with emotion, then looked at the Blood Wave supremely and said with a smile, "Blood, I'm afraid Jian Wushuang's current power is no longer under you and me." Blood Wave Supreme nodded with a smile and replied, "Yeah, in my opinion, it won't be long before the sword warriors are able to grow to the point where it is enough to protect my life. This kid's talent is really terrifying." The Supreme Masters laughed at each other, but they were the overlords of the Sword Alliance, and they seemed to be thinking about it, and their expressions were a little worried. Seeing this, Xuanbo could not help laughing and asked, "Bawang Xiaoyu, what are you worried about? Could it still be that Shi Huai feels that Jian Wushuang has gone this time without bringing you?" The overlord heard the words and quickly converged his thoughts and replied, "This is not true. Since the Lord has done so, he naturally has his consideration." "Oh, little King Naha, why are you looking sad?" Blood Wave Supreme couldn't help but be a little surprised. The overlord took a deep breath and replied, "Blood Supreme, now everyone knows that the Supreme Lord beheaded and killed the Supreme Master of Blood. Many people have expected that the Supreme Lord wants to bring those 6 forces one by one. I came to the door, and now I am afraid of other forces. I have already prepared. I am worried that the Lord, will be in an ambush." Bloodwave Supreme heard the words. His face did not appear as worried as the overlord imagined, but he reached out and patted his shoulder, looking through the door of the Supreme Temple, looking to the distant void, smiling slightly. "Overlord Xiaoyu, you can rest assured that you can think of Sword Wushuang naturally. We don't need to worry about these, as long as we wait here and wait for the good news of Jian Wushuang." The tyrant heard a moment's silence, then said with a bitter smile, "So too." After the news of Jian Wushuang slaying and killing the Blood Heaven Supreme spread, the entire universe, which had been slightly calm, once again fell into turmoil. In the depths of the universe, the temple is too empty. Bingyu Supreme slaps the throne of the throne and smashes it. His face is green, miscellaneous. "This sword is unparalleled. We haven't bothered him yet. How dare he come to our trouble? Does he really think he is a character?" The sound of Bingyu Supreme was full of deep anger. Under him, the Supreme, who was originally packed full of seats, had no more than 10, and only 2 or 3 kittens remained. The Lord of the Temple is angry. One of the Supremes of the Taishu Shrine quickly soothed. With this remark, the Ice Cream Supreme, which was originally unsightly, became even more ugly. This seat has been said many times. This seat is now the emperor of the Taishu Temple, not the owner of the temple. Bingyu looked at him coldly. Suddenly, the several supreme people present heard the words, looked at each other, and sighed in their hearts. Since Bingyu Supreme himself personally failed to stab Jian Wushuang, he was even humiliated in public by Maro's ancestors. After a punch, he became more moody and grumpy. I know. The Supreme nodded his head, and then said with a little worry, Master God, the sword is unparalleled nowadays. I'm afraid that we will come to the door if we don't have time. We better prepare early. Get ready early. Just rely on his sword unparalleled. Bingyu Supreme heard a contemptuous sneer and shook his head. You think that this seat is a day, that waste can't be achieved. This seat will be afraid of a swordless match. If he doesn't come, it's fine. If he dares to come, this seat will tell him to come. Return. This. Several Supremes heard the words, their faces flashed with hesitation, and they felt that Bingyu Supreme was a little too conceited. Seeing this, Bingyu Extreme saw their thoughts at a glance, and couldn't help humming, I see that you are frightened by the sword warriors. He can't be better than the Supreme Master, can he be stronger? This seat. What a shame. After a cold glance at the Supremes, Bingyu Supreme strode out. In the hall, these Supremes heard a bitter laughter, and looked at each other face to face, but they felt that they could rely on a sword, and they would not cause trouble to the Taishu Temple. After all, they had only half of them. In addition to the invincible practice, there are other hole cards. Thinking of this, they were slightly relieved, but for some reason, they still felt uneasy inside. Chapter 44:16. At the same time. In the universe. A cosmic boat was sailing through the stars, breaking through the nebula all the way. This cosmic boat is not fast, and it is quite leisurely. In the spacecraft, a young man with a cold face wearing a black robe was sitting cross-legged, playing with the jade tube in his hand. This person is naturally the sword unparalleled, and this jade tube is when he left the Temple of Life, and was handed to him by the Supreme Master of Blood, which recorded the detailed information of the 6 forces. If it wasn't for this jade tube, the Blood God Supreme Division of Blood Demon would be recorded. Maybe he would have escaped. Jian Wushuang raised his head and sighed slightly. There is no weak person who can reach the top of the Supreme. The Blood Heaven Supreme not only has great strength and frequent means, but also has a supernatural talent similar to his divine power decomposition. However, it can also be calculated from this. My current strength is definitely far above the top. Jian Wushuang thought of this, could not help but smile. This time against the Supreme Master of Blood, he finally got a general understanding of his strength. Now I can rely on the chaos-domineering body alone to be able to harden the top Supreme. For example, he and the Blood Heaven Palace Master and others can fight against each other. And if you use the Taro Excalibur, you have the ability to kill the top extreme, and this is not the case with the killer. For example, the last 3 styles of Taro Sword Code, Dusk, 4 Seasons, Taro. These 3 types of kendo supernatural powers, but one move is more powerful than one move. I am afraid that once they are used, they will be able to instantly reach the level of the Supreme Master of Blood Heaven Palace. My current combat strength should be above the top, but not yet the level of invincibility. Jian's eyes revealed the meaning of contemplation. Since he practiced, he can be considered to have seen a lot of invincible Supreme shots, such as Gafu Supreme, such as Dayu Shrine Lord Black Feather Supreme, such as Patriarchs and so on. Among them, no matter what, they have the power to kill the top Supreme. In front of them, the top Supreme is not a chicken and a dog. Even if the Dragon family, Long Bai, who had broken through the invincible Supreme soon, was in the battlefield of the Life Shrine at first, but with a slight bump, the Bloodwave Supreme, Great Axe Supreme, and Jojia King were all repelled. Then my current strength should be half-step invincible and supreme, and even better by 1 point. Jian Wu's eyes revealed the gods. After a moment, Jian Wushuang converged his thoughts and opened the second page of the bamboo tube. The information recorded above is the Great Kingdom of the Sun. Great Sun God Kingdom. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes, and there was a cold flash in his eyes. Boom. The next moment, the spacecraft accelerated suddenly and disappeared into the starry sky. Deep in the universe. The country of the great Japanese god has a vast territory and occupies the 3-star domains. God rules tens of billions of people in the country. In the universe, it is a well-known old-fashioned power. Since the last emperor of the great Japanese sun annihilated in the aftermath of the Holocaust, although the strength of the great Japanese nation has shrunk a lot, it still cannot be underestimated. Today, it is the time for the worship of the ancestors of the great gods. The sacrifice ceremony is a grand event that will be held for every 100 chaotic times of the great Japanese god kingdom, praising the founding emperor of the great Japanese god kingdom, and a series of feats. Therefore, in the city of King Dairigen today, the lanterns are bright and colorful, whether it is some sects that belong to Dairigen's domestic rule or other forces that have always been good with the kingdom of Dairigen. Today, all kinds of expensive gifts are brought to Dai King City to congratulate. In the middle of the king's city, there is a towering hall, which is the palace of the kingdom of God. Tianji Shenzong, carrying 10 capsules of Huadan pill, attacking 20 top-quality treasures, and 500,000 universe source stones, came to congratulate the great sun god kingdom. Yuding is supreme, with 10 stars, come to congratulate the great kingdom of God. A long voice of the servants of Secretary Li Jian sounded a long time ago. In the early morning, representatives of the various forces who had made good relations with the great sun god kingdom came. In the Golden Palace Hall of the Imperial Palace, the great emperor of the sun sits on the throne. Followed by the messengers who came to visit, until the very end, was the prince of the great sun god kingdom. Everyone talked and laughed, and pointed out the rivers and mountains, so please. Daily, have you heard of the recent event in the universe? After 3 rounds of drinking, a strong man looked at the Emperor Dairi and said with a smile. Extreme rainforest, are you talking about Jian Wushuang's killing the Lord of the Blood Temple? The Emperor Dairi heard the words, and the smile on his face sank slowly, and he asked. Good. The Rainforest Supreme nodded his head, reminding in good faith, Dairi, you are not far away from the Blood Temple, you have to be careful that Jian Wushuang came to find trouble. Today's sword matchless climate has become, there are a lot of supreme presents, but if the sword matchless, there is really a bun in my heart. The Emperor Dairi nodded his head when he heard the words. He is also a top supreme practitioner. In terms of strength, it is not much different from the Blood Heaven Palace Lord. Since Jian Wushuang can cut and kill the Blood Heaven Palace Lord, it means that Jian Wushuang has the ability to kill him. Taking a deep breath, the Emperor Dari looked at the old man who was sitting next to him and said, Everyone is assured that the king has already prepared, and specially invited the Yuding Supreme to come to shelter. And Yuding the Supreme has promised the king that if Jian Wushuang dares to come to trouble, he will kill Jian Wushuang. After a pause, the Emperor of the Sun looked at Yuding Supreme, and said with a slight smile, Yuding Supreme, are you right? This Jade Ding Supreme is thin and thin, with silver hair running through a wooden clog, and dangles behind his head. Yes, there is an old man here, and that sword is unparalleled. The Yuding Supreme nodded his head, his face proud. Some other Supreme heard a sigh of relief. Yuding Supreme is a long-established veteran Supreme in the universe. As early as hundreds of prehistoric times, he has broken into the half-step invincible Supreme cultivation. With him, there is no need to fear the sword. Haha, now that the Emperor of the Sun has asked Yuding to take the shot, everything is fine. It's okay if the sword Wushuang does not come. If it does, the Supreme Master Yuding will just teach him. The sword Wushuang in the province is really lawless, thinking that no one in this world can overcome him. With Yuding Supreme, I can rest assured that the drink is unparalleled, not enough. A sound of disdain and laughter sounded, and the palace resumed lively again, and between words, there was full of disdain and contempt for the sword unparalleled. Among them a prince in a luxurious brocade, with a magnificent appearance, even got up and said, Father, there is only one sword unparalleled in the world. Why should the Supreme Master Yuding shoot? If he dares to come, he can chop his head under the sword with a baby. After hearing this, the great emperor laughed and laughed. It is not easy for my son to have such courage. After he inherits our position, he will be able to achieve a grand domination. Only the little thief of Jian Wushuang, the strength is indeed good. It is not long before you broke through the Supreme. You should first solidify your solidity, and then talk about sword killing. The prince heard the words, with respect in his mouth, but he was quite dissatisfied. In his opinion, Jian Wushuang was the same as him, but only broke through the Supreme realm, and he could not be stronger. Well, if this sword is unparalleled, it will not have to say anything if it doesn't have a too strong sword. The prince hummed in his heart. Chapter 44:17. At the same time. A handsome young man wearing a large black robe with a sword hanging around his waist and a bucket hat, blocking most of his face, and only showing his chin, has stepped into the city of King Sunday. It's a bustling city. Jian Wushuang stepped on the royal road, and looked around casually. This great king of the Sun City occupies almost half of the planet's location, with a very wide area, but it does not look empty at all, but is particularly lively. Someone kept rushing past him and discussing with each other. Hurry up, this ancestor worship ceremony. The palace is said to have taken out hundreds of divine medicine to reward the world. Speaking of the day when the old emperor abdicated and the new emperor ascended the throne, as a result, the young Emperor Shao was slain by the sword unparalleled in the ancient sky, and everything became a dream bubble. You said, will Jian Wushuang come on the day of great joy? Who knows, but I heard that Lord Emperor has invited the strong to sit in the royal palace, and if the swordsman dares to come, he can teach him to come back. Don't talk about this, don't talk about this. I will go to the palace and fight for the potion and the source stone of the universe. What is the relationship between these big men and me? That's right, let's hurry up and don't let others take the lead. There was a rush of discussion, and Jian Wushuang lost his hand, and no one could recognize him. Is today the ceremony of the great kingdom of the sun? Is the strong still invited? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I don't know if this great Japanese emperor would like the gift he gave. While thinking about it, Jian Wushuang walked towards the Dairi Imperial Palace. There were more pedestrians along the way, all in a hurry. Among them, a master carrying an axe saw Jian Wushuang leisurely, and was not anxious. He also kindly reminded, little brother, you have to hurry up, otherwise you will have nothing more. Jian Wushuang smiled back and said, anyway, I'm not going to collect the rewards, I'm going to give gifts. The master who carried the axe could not help but hesitated, and immediately shook his head, saying no more, and rushing forward. There are 9 gates and 3 doors in the imperial palace. The side doors on both sides are for ordinary monks to walk, and this time is also used to distribute rewards. The middle arch, this time, is used to greet the congratulatory messenger. Only those who have received the invitation from the Emperor of the Sun can enter. Stop here. As soon as Jian Wushuang reached the gate of the middle palace, the 2 gods who ultimately dominated the realm held the halberd in his hand and blocked him. Can you have an invitation? The 2 gods will speak coldly. No. Jian Wushuang wore a dipper, only revealed a chin, and replied slightly. That's where the prizes come. The prizes are at the side doors on both sides, and they quickly retreat. The 2 gods looked at Jian Wushuang up and down, seeing that his breath was unusual, not like a big man, and he suddenly scolded. Jian Wushuang laughed and heard, I'm here to congratulate you. Huh. Then you pick it up, and let me wait to confirm my identity. The 2 gods would look at each other and said, okay. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and then slowly took off the bucket hoe. A cold and sober face suddenly appeared. The next moment, a thunderous sound exploded. Swords of life, Jingu sword, come to watch and congratulate, boom. Suddenly, the sound shook for thousands of miles, and the city was uproar. What? Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang is here. No. Stop him, and sue the Lord. Suddenly, the 2 gods were shocked, and their faces turned pale. Jian Wushuang's name is really too big, the supreme number of hands that died in his hands, and there are even giant arms such as the Blood Heaven Palace Lord. The major monks who received the reward in the distance were equally shocked. The axe-resistant monk who had greeted Jian Wushuang before, even his eyes fell down in amazement and gazed at his eyes. He has Jian Wushuang? The two gods will hit a stunner and yell, quickly start the moat. After that, they took a shot with both palms and retreated into the palace with countless divine powers. A scorching big day rose rapidly from the center of the palace. Immediately, countless gods radiated around this big day, forming a mask like an eggshell, protecting the entire palace. Rejecting customers outside the door, is this the way to treat the great kingdom of God? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows lightly, immediately stepped on his feet, his body suddenly rose into the sky, turned into a golden light, and swept across the entire palace. The next moment, Jian Wushuang bowed his head and looked down at the entire palace, stepping down with his right foot. Bang! Suddenly, a surge of violence surging to the extreme, with Jian Wushuang's right foot, hit the mask that sheltered the palace severely. In a short time, the entire city of King Day Sun was like an earthquake, and it was shaken in madness. The palace in the center of King Day Sun was a flat boat rolling in the sea of anger, as if it was about to break. Sword of Life Jingu sword, come to congratulate, and observe the ceremony of King Dairi. Jian Wushuang's indifferent voice blew again. The residents in the entire city of Dari King felt like they had been bombarded in their ears, making them deaf. Inside the Sun Palace, the Emperor Dairi, who was drinking and having fun, suddenly changed his face. Sword unparalleled. Jack. The Emperor Dairi suddenly got up and stood up. His face was extremely gloomy. Snapped. The wine glass in his hand was severely dropped on the ground by him, shattered. Jian Wushuang will come, he is no more surprised. But today, it is the ancestor ceremony. This is too much. Yuding Supreme. The Emperor Dairi took a deep breath, turned his head to look at Yuding Supreme, and arched his hand. The expression of Yuding Supreme was indifferent. When he saw this, he nodded slightly with his jaw. He drank the wine in the cup in a hurry, and said, "Rest assured, if you have this seat today, that sword is unsurpassed. UCANT go to it. He is against the enemy, and if he loses, he will shoot." That would be good. The Emperor of the Day was slightly relieved when he heard the words. As soon as he was about to go out to meet the enemy, he saw the Emperor of the Day sitting at the end and stood up and said, "The father is a little calm and restless. The sword is unparalleled, but it's just a superb elementary realm, and it's just a matter of training with the baby. Why should the father give him a shot? Well, I'll meet him when he sees him, and see how capable he is. How dare he be so arrogant?" Having said that, the Japanese prince strode toward the palace. "My son must be." Seeing that his face changed greatly, the Emperor of the Great Sun was about to stop, and he saw the steps of the Emperor of the Great Sun. He had turned into a streamer and flew into the sky. Oops. The Emperor Dairi only sank with a single heart, and did not dare to delay, and hurriedly chased after the Emperor Dai. 3 heads. Chapter 44:18. On the Great Palace of the Kingdom of God. The sword is unparalleled, with black hair flying, and under him, the towering city of Dari is like an ant. At this moment, tens of thousands of people in the king's city of Dari looked up at Jian Wushuang, their hearts trembled. They did not expect that Jian Wushuang would break into the Japanese palace directly in such a domineering manner, without any fear. Is this sword? Sure enough, it's a pride. I've heard that swords have been practiced for 700,000 years without both parties, and they can step on the great kingdom of God, which is really awesome. Just like her husband. Countless people looked at the figure of Jian Wushuang in the king's city of Dari, and they all spoke. Bold. At this moment, a young man with a handsome face wearing a Jinhua suit rushed out of the palace in one step. The sword is unparalleled. This is the forbidden area of the palace. How dare you be brazen? The Chinese youth looked coldly at Jian Wushuang and scolded him. Okay. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, and asked lightly, "Who are you?" "The great Emperor of the Sun. Guanai, the great prince of the 7 kingdoms of God, Haoji." Jian Wushuang, "Just because you want to see my father?" Haoji Prince shook his sleeve and said coldly, "Prince Haoji is here." Prince Haoji has recently broken through the elementary supreme, and it is very likely that he will inherit the position of emperor. Don't say that, just talking about the gas field. Prince Haoji never loses sword unparalleled. There was a discussion in the city, and there was no expression on Prince Haoji's face, but there was a sense of contentment in his eyes. Why did he volunteer to come out first? Didn't he just want the immediate effect? Sword unparalleled, you quickly retreat, and that's it for today. If you dare to dominate here again, don't blame me for being polite to you, Prince Haoji said with a heavy hum. This humming, suddenly like a thunder blast, thunder and thunder, has already used the supreme divine power, so that the entire city of Dari Wang, a shock. You're welcome. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and couldn't help but laugh and said, even if this is your dad, the emperor, I am afraid to tell me now, where do you dare to threaten me? Presumptuous. After hearing this, Prince Haoji was furious and screamed, you are the one who dare to insult my father. You are the only one who dares to insult my father. You alone can't rely on the Terra Excalibur villain, but you dare not use it. Fighting alone? Are you worth it? Jian Wushuang sneered scornfully, too lazy to talk to him again, and shook his head, go back and let your father come to see me. Huh. The words fell, Jian Wushuang pointed at one hand, and went towards the bullet of Emperor Haoji. There was a trembling sound in the void. A sword gas condensed at the fingertips of the sword unparalleled, and then shot out suddenly, turning into a slap, as if rolling into a black wave, across the sky 10 miles, banging on the face of Prince Haoji. Huh. Suddenly, a scarlet slap print was printed on Prince Haoji's face, and the whole person was beaten by this palm with eyes staring at Venus. The next moment, a huge force exploded on his face, blasting him into the palace like a meteor, smashing into countless temples, and trembling to the extreme. In the city of King Day, a mass of people looked at this scene, and all of them were petrified. Prince Haoji just so clamored, and the result is just a slap, then it's gone? What just happened? Here, this special lady is purely to give people away. The crowd swallowed and said in shock. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, neither sad nor unhappy. For him today, the monks below the Supreme could not even make him interested. And just then, a crackling roar suddenly sounded. Swords warriors. Boom tilde. A majestic middle-aged man wearing a crown and wearing a dragon robe rose from the palace, staring at Jian Wushuang violently. This person is a great emperor of the sun. Jian Wushuang, you kill my young emperor first, and now you destroy my palace at the ceremony of ancestor worship of your king, and seriously hurt my son. It is too bullying. Emperor Tairi spoke furiously. A horrible atmosphere, like an angry ocean, constantly set off a raging wave and slapped the quartet. This breath is from the same origin as Prince Haoji, but it is much stronger, not at all in a grade. That's kind of interesting. Jian Wushuang nodded his head in admiration. The divine emperor had a strong and powerful divine power, much stronger than that of the blood god. Immediately, Jian was eyes turned, looking at the emperor of the sun, as if he heard some of the world's most funny jokes, sneer, too much bullying. At the beginning, your 6 major forces chased me from the starry sky to the Temple of Life, and in the end they killed me, and even brought the Temple of Life to peace. The White Tiger Supreme fell and covered Fu Zhizhuang fell asleep, and countless apprentices of the palace died. Do you remember this account? Ever thought of bullying too much? You now say that my sword is so deceptive, it's a joke. Speaking of the back, sword Wushuang is heavier than one word, just like the thunder of a thunder, and deafening. He came to pacify the 6 major forces this time, not only for him, but also for those who guarded the life shrine, guarded his sword unparalleled, and were killed by the shrine disciple. If he does not settle these 6 forces in a day, he will feel uneasy all day. When the Emperor Day's son heard a change in his expression, he couldn't say anything to refute Jian Wushuang, and he had to rattle his teeth. Jian Wushuang, I wouldn't say nonsense. My king might as well tell you that today you can't get out of this big king of the sun. After taking a deep breath, the emperor in the sun shone brightly. Is it? Jian Wushuang sneered, slowly holding the hilt of the Taro Excalibur in his hand, and said, God Emperor, ready to catch the gift from my sword Wushuang. Gift for me? What gift? Dari narrowed his eyes. his body full of divine power, behind him, turned into a round of hot sun. Send you to death, boom. Suddenly, the Taro Excalibur came out. A huge horrible sword pressure came to the audience instantly, full of sword energy. Under the pressure of this sword, it is like the King of Swords coming to the world. All the monks with swords in the entire city of Dari are instantly released from their hands, shoot at high altitude, and bow their heads toward the Taro sword. Mtl Novel. In just a few interest rates, the city is full of 3-foot swords. What? How could this be? My sword. For a moment, the audience first fell into silence, and then throbbed. Everyone was wide-eyed, staring at the scene where WAN came. In that void, the heavenly sword forest columns, like courtiers, are suspended under the Taro sword. The Tai Luo divine sword, one of the 7 stalks of the great ancestors born when the universe was developed, is the first ancestor of the sword. And the sword unparalleled holding the Tai Luo divine sword is like the peerless sword coming to the world. The eyebrows are cold and not stained with earth. Chapter 44:19. Kill. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stepped on his right foot, and the whole man shot up, holding the sword and killing the Emperor of the Sun. One step, Jian moves. At the foot of Jian Wushuang, like the thousands of exquisite swords that Ruyan came home to, all the swords are turned, converging like long dragons, stepped on by Jian Wushuang, and slammed into the great Emperor. This sword cuts across the sky, and the sea of clouds is directly split. And the sword unparalleled championed by Chen Jian is like stepping on the top of a fairy, proud of the world's auspicious archery sword god, raising his right hand and slashing down towards the Emperor of the Sun. Raise your hand to open the sky. Good job. The great Emperor of the Sun wasn't afraid, but he laughed loudly, and his hands were full of red light, just like the eternal fucking holding the sun and moon to pick the stars, and collided away with the sword unparalleled. Sword unparalleled, originally you broke through the supreme. This seat has planned to write off the old account with you. Who knows you are so uninterested, dare to come to the door. Then no wonder this seat left you today. Noise. Jian Wushuang's eyebrows were cold, and the Kaitian Jianmang, which was split openly, shook up with the magnificent rays of the sky, and the profound intention of the kendo broke out, but it was directly disintegrated. Jian Wushuang's understanding of kendo has reached an extremely terrifying level in the inheritance of Tai Luo's supreme kendo heritage. Jian Wushuang, your talent is truly outstanding. Whether it is the understanding of magical powers or the use of avenues, it is above the king. But unfortunately, you have forgotten one point, that is, you can be stronger, and you are still the ultimate supreme. The total amount of divine power between the two of us is not at the same level. This gap, even if you are the perfect chaotic creature, cannot be crossed. Oh! Emperor Dairi snorted, and in the palm of his hands, 2 small suns sprang up at the same time. A lot of violent divine power broke out, breaking the sword unparalleled into the sky. Thousands of exquisite swords gathered at the feet of Jian Wu, gathered together to grow dragons, were scattered and turned back in all directions. Sure enough. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes when he saw this, showing an interested look. The strength of this great Japanese emperor and the lord of the Blood Celestial Palace is probably between Bo Zhong, but the way of fighting is quite different. The lord of the Blood Temple, like a poisonous snake entangled in a dark corner, vomiting a letter, intending to throw a fatal blow at any time. The great Emperor of the Sun, it was a big opening and closing, the attack power burst, and it fell 10 times in one fell swoop. Come. Sword warrior twisted his neck, hunting warfare in his eyes, and grabbed again towards the great Emperor of the Sun. The sword Wushuang Yijian fell off and was gripped by the Emperor Dairi. His right leg was swept like a whip, and hit the Emperor's waist fiercely. A muffled noise came, and a huge shock came from the Emperor Sun Ri, slamming the sword's right leg slightly apart, smirking. Jian Wushuang, don't take this as the seat. I don't know that you awakened the indestructible overlord, but it's a pity that the king's divine deity is also one of the eternal deities. Much higher than you. Is it? There was a slight surprise in Jian Wu's eyes. To know that his foot was enough to trample thousands of mountains and have trillions of tons of power, let alone the ordinary supreme take it, it was just an injury. However, the look in Jian eyes quickly restored calmness. With his right hand slung away, the sharp taro sword cut the hands of the great Emperor of the Sun directly, and then stabbed forward again. Humph! Emperor Dairi snorted slightly, stepped back a few steps, and avoided the sword. However, before waiting for his hands to be reorganized, Jian Wushuang's indifferent figure flashed, like a ghost, has dragged a long series of afterimages, appeared behind him, and attacked again. Tear it! The next moment, Tai Luo's Excalibur ripped a long hole on the body of Dari, and numerous blood was shot out. Why so fast? Emperor Dairi shrank his pupils. Suddenly furious, hands regrouped, holding two small suns, and raised his fist to kill the sword unparalleled. One after another, the sound of blasts came, and Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent. Between the movements, the taro sword in his hand kept waving, and he opened the mouth after mouth on the Emperor of the Sun. Swordsmanship does not need to be so powerful, it only needs the simplest chopping and stabbing to kill its enemies. This is Taro Supreme. In the virtual space, it takes 10,000 years to hand over to Jian Wushuang. What? The Emperor Day's Sun was furious to the extreme, his eyes staring at the void around him. On him, there were dense sword marks, and countless blood overflowed from the sword marks, and a blood rain fell. The sword art of sword unparalleled is really too clever and mysterious, far beyond his imagination. No matter how he bombards wildly, the figure of sword unparalleled, like a ghost, keeps moving, resisting, or hiding. He launched thousands of attacks, tearing the sword marks of 3 inches into his bones. He wanted to perform amazing magical powers, but once cast, let us not say what would happen to Jian Wushuang, but he worked hard for nearly 1,000 chaos eras, and the great king of the sun, a land of millions of miles, will be destroyed and no longer existence. Millions of people will shed blood into rivers, turn them into dead bones, and destroy them once. Swords warriors. The teeth of the Emperor Dairi rattled, and the whole person turned into a man, and was about to crack. Breaking dawn. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent. He turned a deaf ear to the roar of the great Emperor of the Sun, and directly performed the breaking dawn sword technique, turning it into an unrivaled sharp golden light, passing through the chest of the great god's body. Suddenly, Emperor Tairi turned his face into a waxy yellow, and the whole person was teetering, almost falling from the air. Fortunately, the big sun body of the big sun emperor is much tougher than that of the blood temple. Under the endless twist of endless power, the sharp sword energy bursting out of Jian Wushuang in his body force suppressed. But Rao is so, the Emperor of the Sun has lost the power of World War I. DJI, if you can do just that, then get ready to die. Jian Wushuang stepped into the void, took a deep breath, and spit out 2 words, Chopper Star. Suddenly, the clouds rolling in the void, the turbulent wind, and the floating dust, all the temple houses in the king's city stood up, as if receiving instructions, gathered together towards the sword without hands, turned into the purest ability, forming the nearly blue forest blue swordma. The sword-cutting sword is the strongest killing sword created by Jian Wushuang. Cut. In the next moment, the sword of Tai Luo with no hands in the sword slashed, and the sword pressure was overbearing and mighty. Chapter 44:20. Inside the Sun King City. A sword across the sky, running through the sun and the moon. All the people who noticed this scene were all shocked and did not dare to channel. Is the Emperor Sun defeated like this? Jian Wushuang is too strong. The strength is far from being comparable to the top supreme. Dali Sun Emperor, will it be the second supreme to be slain by sword Wushuang after the Lord of the Blood Temple? Every discussion sounded. In the imperial palace of the sun, Prince Haoji looked at this scene, but he was all cold, like falling into an ice cellar. Father King. His lips trembled, and at this moment, he didn't even have the courage to stop Jian Wushuang. He and Jian Wushuang are both in the elementary state of supremacy, but until now, he has only realized how big the gap between him and Jian Wushuang is. Above the imperial palace, Emperor Dairi looked at this glorious impossibly, and Mori sword covering the entire sky, his pupils could not help shrinking. He still has many supernatural powers at the bottom of the box, and there are many extreme treasures in the Chenkuan ring. Taking a deep breath, the Emperor of the Sun looked down at the palace, screaming with all his strength, Please ask Yuding Supreme to help laugh. The words fell, and there was no response from the palace, except that everything in the void seemed to be pressed with the pause button. The forest blue sword mangling with unmatched might was like being caught by an invisible hand. Can't fall in the slightest. Ooh! Immediately, a sigh sounded lightly in the void. The next moment, I saw an old man wearing a robe, holding a duster and holding a clean face. His silver hair was with a wooden scoop, and he seemed to be walking out of the palace step by step. Every step he stepped on the void, without using any power, it was as if the heavens and the earth actively laid the steps for him and lifted him up. Let's go. He glanced at Jian Wushuang lightly, without any emotional ups and downs on his face, just a gentle shake of the dust in his hands. The starstruck sword horse that struck the world suddenly felt like a sand painting swept by the wind. Far away, dissipated between nothingness. Yuding Supreme. After seeing his shot, the Emperor Day Sun still had a frightened expression, and slowly recovered his calmness. He stood behind him respectfully and arched his hands. Trusted, loyalty. Day, leave it to this seat. Yuding Supreme nodded at him. Who are you? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. He could feel that although the Jade Supreme looked simple and unobtrusive at first glance, if he looked closely, he would find that the person was integrated with the Heaven and Earth Avenue, full of the true meaning of the avenue. Without sending. When it comes to strength, this person is far more horrible than the Emperor Diary, but I am afraid that he has reached the half-step invincible state of supremacy. Yuding of this seat, you are young, you may not have heard of the name of this seat, but you go back and ask the Supreme Master of Blood in your Palace of Life, he will naturally tell you who this seat is. Yuding's expression was dull, and he looked at Jian Wushuang up and down and immediately said, Sword Wushuang, your talent is truly outstanding. I heard that at the grand event of the universe, it is loved by the Lord God. If you can, this seat is unwilling. Hurt your life. After a pause, he calmly said, Jian Wushuang, give this seat a face, and stop at this moment. The various resentments between you and Dari, but you first killed his son Shaodi first, plus your original strength it's really weak and heavy, and you will only be able to hit you in the future. Now that you are using the Supreme Avenue, you can write off all the past. This seat can be decided on behalf of Dari. As long as you retreat now, Eternal World will no longer step into the semi-divided kingdom of the Great God Kingdom. This seat will not hold you to the door today. How about insulting him? After speaking, he also deliberately looked at the Emperor of the Sun and asked, Daride, I have made this decision. Do you have any objection? Emperor Dairi quickly replied, everything follows your arrangement. As for today's Jian Wushuang, he really does not have the will to fight again. He just wants to invite this to kill him quickly. Yuding nodded with satisfaction, then looked at Jian Wushuang, and asked, Jian Wushuang, would you give this seat this face? In his opinion, what Jian Wushuang needs is a step, and now he has given the steps, he is confident that the sword Wushuang will go down the steps. After all, if he really shot, then it will be unavoidable that there will be bullish discussions in the universe. If he wins, it is okay to say, after all, of course, if he loses, his supreme name of Yuding will be ruined. In the Great King Sun City, countless people suddenly focused their eyes on Jian Wushuang's face, waiting for Jian Wushuang's answer. Your face. However, Jian Wushuang replied expressionlessly, I'm sorry, my Jian Wushuang never acted as a bully when he acted in his life, but if he deceives me, I will pay back and return 100 times. In the beginning, the great Japanese goddess kingdom slaughtered thousands of disciples in my life shrine, causing many shrines to fall, and rewarding me with gold in the universe and asking me to be a leader. Now you give me a face in a simple sentence. Never mind. Wow. In the sword without hands, the Tai Luo divine sword is horizontal, the point of the sword is pointed at Yuding Supreme, coldly. I tell you the truth, the Emperor of the Sun is dead today, and you cannot protect him. If you are interested, you will be obedient. I won't care about you. If you want to protect him, then I'm sorry. Don't say that your face will not be given. Bold. Suddenly, Yuding's supreme complexion was iron blue, and there was a strong killing in his eyes. He Yuding is invincible and supreme, no matter where he goes, which side of the hegemon, the giant arm of the sky, does not respect him. This sword Wushuang district is the elementary supreme, even dare to insult him? Are I bold? You can give it a try. Jian Wushuang looked at him coldly, without looking back. Okay Jian Wushuang, since you give your face shame, then don't blame me Yuding for not giving you a chance. Yuding Supreme spoke openly, then fluttered the dust, the whole person turned into a streamer, like a tide, billowing and rushing into the sky. Sword unparalleled, this seat is waiting for you outside the star. In the sky, the cold voice of Yuding Extreme came. It is good. Jian Wushuang glanced down at Dei King City. If the two started a war here, they were afraid that the entire star would be destroyed once and thousands of people would die. It is not his wish that there is a debt and a debtor. When Jian Wushuang stepped on his right foot, he instantly condensed endless sword energy, and the last sharp and brilliant Huang Jian Mang soared into the sky and shot out of the stars. Chapter 44:21. Above the Imperial Palace. Emperor Darius' face was gloomy and his eyes kept flashing. He didn't expect that Jian Wushuang would dare not even give Yuding's supreme face, and he was so determined to kill him. Father King. Prince Haoji flew up and stood next to the Emperor of the Sun, and said, Father King, it seems that Jian Wushuang has been determined to endlessly die with our great kingdom of God. In this case, we might as well catch up. While Jian Wushuang and Yuding Supreme are not paying attention, I wait for a joint shot and double-click kill. Oh. Emperor Tairi raised a brow and immediately nodded. Yes, if you can't kill Jian Wushuang today, you're afraid of endless troubles in the future. After that, the Emperor of the Sun flew into a rolling sun, like a fireball, chasing towards Jian Wushuang and Yuding Supreme. Prince Haoji is also not slow, followed closely. After a while, there was only a messy imperial city of Japan, many people, and concierges who came to watch the ceremony. Hurry up, but this battle is about the life and death of the great Sun God Kingdom. How can we not miss it? Yes. One is the first genius of the universe, and the other is the half-step invincible supreme who has been famous for a long time. This battle is destined to be very exciting. We will catch up soon. For a moment, after everyone looked at each other, they performed magical powers, or turned into glorious lights, or turned into gods, and flew towards the sky. The universe is boundless. Stars shone, and galaxies crossed. Sword unparalleled, you are too arrogant, do not understand the reason for just breaking. Yuding's expression was cold, holding a duster, and looking at the sword unparalleled. If you practice 100 chaos ages with all your heart, you will take it one step further, or you will reach the top of the supreme practice, then this one will never dare to intervene in this muddy water, or even worry about your existence. Even this great sun, the ancestral ceremony of the kingdom, will not participate. Unfortunately, you broke through the supremacy, and you are proud of yourself, and come to seek revenge, you are just seeking death. Is that so? Jian Wushuang's brow lifted, the purple eyes twinkled, and a frightful war broke out from him. Unfortunately, I was trying to be invincible and half-step invincible, pinch my wrist. Yuding, let me see your ability. Who in the end gave you the confidence and dare to intervene in my sword unparalleled thing? The words fell, and Jian Wushuang stepped on his feet, turning directly into a mighty daybreak Jianmang, killing Yuding Supreme. The whole starry sky, only one golden light left. Oh! This sword move is in the Tara sword code. When Taro Supreme ruled the universe, I had the honor to witness that if you only talk about the skill level of the sword, regardless of the power, I am afraid that I will not lose it. Taro Supreme. Yuding Supreme expressed admiration, but Sen Han's eyes did not decrease by half. This sword move is enough to pose a life and death threat to the Supreme. Unfortunately, it is not enough to look at this seat. Shaking his head, Yuding Supreme flicked the dust gently in his hand, and a colorful light immediately waved out, with unparalleled power, blasting the sword in the front. Suddenly, a huge force of repulsion emerged from this colorful divine light, which was actually breaking the dawning swordsman directly from the original energy to disintegrate and split. Puff! The figure of Jian Wushuang was like hitting an invisible glass. The figure sprinting forward was held up fiercely, and then was shot backwards. Da. Jian Wushuang stepped back 3 steps in a row before he stabilized his body and his blood was boiling. Is this half-step invincible supreme? Sure enough, it is much stronger than the top supreme. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, and immediately there was no reservation of the whole body's divine power, and the explosion broke out. Come again. A towering warfare exploded around Jian Wushuang as the center, soaring. The next moment, Jian Wushuang appeared on the top of Yuding Supreme. The Tai Luo divine sword burst with a strong sword pressure. Sculpture of the worm. Yuding supremely hummed, and swiped his right hand on the dust, and all of the white wires in his hand suddenly became vertical, as hard as iron, and turned into the shape of a long knife. Tai Luo's Excalibur slashed on the duster's long sword, but failed to cut it off, instead pulling up a long string of sparks. The sword is unparalleled. If Taro Supreme holds this Taro Excalibur sword, I'm afraid I will be chopped when I meet him, but Taro Excalibur is in your hands, but the pearl is dusty. After all, the gap between you and me is too big. Yuding disdain sneered, and then quickly changed his wrist, one after another splitting 32 knives, one knives faster than one knives, the sword unparalleled. Mystery, Star River Slash. Seeing Jian Shuangshu retreating, Yuding Supreme held Fushan's right hand again, and the Fushan even changed again. Countless white wires grew madly, and the cooperation turned into a steel whip. Crackling tilde. This whip directly blasted a void in the void, and made a clicking sound similar to glass breaking, which caused numerous air machines to stir and set off a violent wind. Puff. Immediately, the whip landed on Jian Wushuang's chest fiercely, and his violent power directly ripped his chaotic domineering body, tearing a long slap scar. This scene fell into the eyes of many people who came to watch the war in the distance, and immediately caused a shock. Yuding Supreme is indeed a half-step invincible supreme. Whether it is attacking might or fighting skills, it has reached the point of being invincible. This whisker in the hand of Yuding Supreme is an imitation of Qianji Fu, one of the 7 ancestors of the 7 handles, which can be changed into any weapon, and the power is only a little weaker than the real Qianji Fu. It seems that the invincible Jian Wushuang has been pushed all the way. This time it is in big trouble. Everyone in the audience was watching, and they started to discuss. The great Emperor of the Sun and the Emperor Haoji took a look of joy in their eyes. Father Wang, it seems that this sword is unparalleled, and it is not a supreme opponent of Yuding. Prince Haoji said. The Emperor Dairi smiled and nodded, and his nervousness on his face turned extremely relaxed. Yuding Supreme is the super strong who survived the catastrophe and survived, but the sword Wushuang is just a hairy doll with a stinky flesh. With his own talent and some opportunities, he will be fierce for a while. Naturally, it cannot be Yuding's supreme opponent. Emperor Dairi shook his head and smiled. On the starry sky www.mtl Novelle. Jian Wushuang looked down at the scratch wound on his chest, his eyes flashed, and then he sighed. It is truly invincible in half a step, all aspects have reached maturity, not so easy to deal with. Yuding Supreme heard the words, with a touch of irony on his face, saying, Jian Wushuang, do you know the gap between you and me? It's not too late for you to give up, as long as you have a better attitude and are willing to apologize to this person in front of everyone. This one is not incapable of letting you go make your way. Jian Wushuang, this is the last chance this seat gives you, you must know how to cherish it. After that, Yuding Supreme looked down at Jian Wushuang, and his eyes were full of condescension. Jian Wushuang heard the words and grinned, only responding to 4 words. Whimsical. Chapter 44-22. Insufferable. Yuding Supreme heard that his face sank and said coldly, Jian Wushuang, since you are so lacking in discipline, this seat will give you the elders of the Temple of Life to discipline you. With a wave of his right hand, the duster in his hand turned into a magic pen, and stroked in the void in front of him, directly drawing a pattern of Jin Chankan's yin and yang tai kai mystery, a seal. Yuding uttered a low sigh, turned the dust brush in his hand into a heavy brush, and cast a heavy weight on this yin and yang tai chi pattern. Suddenly, this yin and yang tai chi moan uttered a low groan, which sprang up into the air, and then continuously zoomed in, rising in the wind, and in just a few breaths, it was like a cloth curtain covering the entire sky, all block. After doing all this, Yu Ding Supreme stepped on his feet and flew up, turning the dust in his hand into a giant axe, and splitting down towards the sword Wushuang. Talents, primitive universe. Jian Wu's eyes captured the hunting and hunting warfare, directly turning on the talented supernatural powers. Instantly, a strong force came to the world, turning the surrounding void into a dark magnetic field. Boom! Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's breath soared again, and the movement of Yu Ding Supreme's flying split could not help but stagnate. It is this stagnation, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Chopper star, boom. Sen Lan Jianmang condensed in the hands of the sword, and split it instantly with a strong sword pressure, and the starry sky was split directly, as if passing by the sea. Oh! Yu Ding squinted his eyes narrowly, and then sneered, what a surprise, but unfortunately, it didn't work for me. Qian Jifu, change. He drank aloud, and in a flash, his hand turned into a duster of a giant axe, and the white wires suddenly spread out, like a girl's loose flower, making a clicking noise, and the next breath, these white wires merged and turned into a prismatic shield will protect Yu Ding Supreme. The star-slicing sword slashed on the shield, and suddenly made a loud noise shaking the mountain, as if the whole universe directly caused a 10,000 magnitude earthquake, a force of shock, flying along the shield, spreading to all direction. Rewind. The fight between these two men is terrifying. In a short time, among the people who watched the battle, those who did not reach the highest level of supremacy were violently retreating backwards and backwards, slamming their sleeves to withstand the violent shock waves. The Yu Ding Supreme has already stepped after blocking the star-cut Jianmang, like a tide of smoke, rolling towards the sword Wushuang. Come! In the eyes of the sword Wushan, the mansions skyrocketed, and the Tai Luo divine sword swept across the 99 swords, tearing the sky, arrogant sky, and killing Yu Ding Supreme. The two instantly fought with more than 100 moves, one with sharp swords, the other with magical powers that destroyed the world, and the whole universe seemed to be destroyed, and one black void after another was exploded. The speed of both of them was extremely fast, and even the crowd of the audience had already worked hard to capture the movements of the two with their eyes. I saw that the sword with no hands in the sword continued to chop and stab, and the sword shadows overlapped, like a dream, giving a very beautiful feeling. And the dust brush in the hand of Yu Ding Supreme is ever-changing, once transformed into a long knife to tear the sky, once transformed into a giant axe to open the world, and once transformed into a spear to sweep the world. The two keep moving, from this star to another star, just like the two divine powers that cross each other. The collisions that occur again and again produce the surrounding stars into powder, as if to reopen chaos and make the universe boil. These two are too strong. Yu Ding Supreme is worthy of being a half-step invincible supreme. Before the great Emperor of the Sun, there was no way to deal with the sword without hands, but Yu Ding Supreme was able to cope with it. He was not afraid of Sword Master, and even suppressed Sword Master. The real horror is Jian Wushuang. Think about it, Yu Ding Supreme has cultivated thousands of chaos periods before he has such a powerful strength, but how long did Jian Wushuang practice? 700,000 years. More than 700,000 years, Jian Wushuang can be indistinguishable from Yu Ding Supreme. What is this concept? This seat is closed a little, it will take 700,000 years. Fortunately, the two did not make a shot in King's City, or let's not talk about King's City. I'm afraid that the entire kingdom of God's day will die out instantly. The gap between people is really too big. The audience were all amazed, some supreme masters who had been cultivating for a long time, and looked at the surging Jian Wushuang, their hearts even gave birth to a kind of frustrated sigh. Jian Wushuang, let's die. Yu Ding Supreme frowned, seemingly bored, and Jian Wushuang continued to cling to it, his hands quickly printing method. Extreme divine art, purple Xiao mantra. Suddenly, a golden-yellow curse was condensed in the void, and an extremely powerful coercion detonated the quartet, which was enough to subject the world and the world to surrender. The next moment, this curse is as if one person was carrying two giant tripods, coming towards the sword Wushuang. In the void, he was directly blasted out of an annihilation channel. Cut. There was a dignified meaning in the eyes of Jian Wu, and he even cut 9 swords to open the sky stop this curse. The first sword, Let the speed of this curse be slightly slower. The second sword, on this curse, had a fissure the size of a hair. Third sword. The fourth sword. After the sword Wushuang 9 swords came out, this curse could no longer hold on, first shaking, then violently, and the countless spirits of the Chinese race shot at the universe in all directions. Call. Swordsman slightly relieved, rare sweat beads appeared on his forehead. 9 swords in succession, but his exhaustion of the whole body of the power to split it is no small drain on him. And just then, Jian Wushuang, let's die. A loud laugh sounded. Immediately afterwards, he saw the Emperor of the Sun turned into a fireball, slammed it into the sword, and smashed it on the body of the sword Wushuang. This blow is the great save of the great Emperor of the Sun, and he will kill the sword unparalleled. Suddenly, under this great force, Jian Wushuang flew upside down, directly penetrating a star in the distance, and then flew down thousands of feet again, and then stopped. I saw a hole in the size of Kuju on Jian Wushuang's chest, and countless Mars burned on him. Tick-tick. The blood of countless tyrants fell along this wound, and continuously burned black holes in the void, burning a burst of white smoke, and permeating Jian Wushuang's body. Diary. Yuding Supreme's complexion changed slightly, and he looked a little displeased to the Emperor of the Sun. He used to deal with the sword unparalleled, even if he bullied the small, but the Emperor of the Sun still attacked. If it spreads, wouldn't his reputation be ruined? I want to talk with more like-minded people to Sword Master Wandao. WeChat pays attention to reading literature to read novels, talk about life, find friends. Chapter 44-23. Extreme Yuding, it'll be foolproof until I kill this little thief together. I promise to double your benefits later, okay? Emperor Diary said with a smile. After hearing this, Yuding Supreme found his face a little slower and shook his head and said, the sword is unparalleled now, but it is the end of a powerful crossbow. It is no longer a threat. He can't live today. The words of the crickets fell, Yuding's expression was indifferent, and he walked step by step towards the sword unparalleled, ready to cast his final killing blow. The Emperor Diary and the Emperor Haoji walked on both sides, his eyes filled with murder, and the corners of his mouth evoked a sneer of pleasure. The three of them joined together and approached Zhenshuang quickly. In the distance, everyone watching the scene saw this scene, and his face suddenly changed. It's really shameless. Jian Wushuang is just a junior supreme. Why even join hands? This great Emperor of the Sun is also the leader of one side of the power, the top and supreme. I can't think of it so unbearably, and the front is defeated by Jian Wushuang, so I sneak attack while taking advantage of the swords. It seems that the great Emperor of the Sun has already hated the sword unparalleled hatred and has done everything. Someone said scornfully. There are others who sighed and shook their heads. It's no wonder that the big day, since Jian Wushuang decided to come and settle in the big kingdom of the big day, this scene should be thought of. It's just a pity that Jian Wushuang is in such a vertical position that it should be the treasure of my universe, but it will fall here unexpectedly. Jian Wushuang is too arrogant and too arrogant. If I were him, I would hide in the dark, wait until the ceremony of the ancestors passed, all the guests left, and then find a chance to slowly map it. It's just a pity that sword is unparalleled, and chose one of the most arrogant and high-profile, and the easiest way to gather fire. Everyone whispered and talked differently, but in general, almost all of them were unworthy of swords. Crackling. Each step of the Emperor Tyree fell into the void with a muffled sound, as if a dying approaching, proclaiming the death of sword unparalleled. Sword unparalleled, aren't you the first genius in the universe? Aren't you going to settle down my kingdom of the great God of God? Let's take another look at it. The Emperor Prince Haoji said with a smile on the corner of his mouth and said ironically. But Yuding Supreme said with a blank expression, Jian Wushuang, I admit that you are strong, but unfortunately, you have chosen the wrong opponent and should not be your enemy. In the eyes of the three men, all of them emit different light, or indifferent or indifferent. They are confident that under the joint of the three, Jian Wushuang is undoubtedly dead. The smoky waves of the sky gradually dispersed. The three of them are distanced from Jian Wushuang, but they are 10 feet away. Then, at this moment, a quiet voice sounded from the smoke waves that had not completely dispersed. I didn't want to use this sword, I intend to leave it to Bingyu. But why? Why? Why do you have to die? Huh. The next moment, the smoky waves of the sky suddenly shattered, revealing the indifferent figure of Jian Wushuang. The blood hole blasted out by the Emperor Diary in his chest has been restored, exuding bright golden light, as if the perfect body of the of heaven. With his hands in his hands, the eyes of the Taro Excalibur's hilt were spreading wide. A huge surge of sword pressure was released from the Taro Excalibur. Sword unparalleled. Suddenly, the three of Yuding Supreme stepped together and their pupils shrank. I do not know why, they felt a breath of enthusiasm on Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, he ignored them, but looked up at woody starry sky, then closed his eyes slowly, and said silently, "Third sword of Tara, dusk." Alas! There was a wind between heaven and earth. The sword has no Taro sword in both hands. Starting from the point of the sword, it becomes sandy and disappears gradually. The whole world, falling into stillness. The stars that were originally suspended in the universe seemed to have lost their gravity and began to fall, as if they were about to fall into an abyss. What is this? The Emperor Diary and the Emperor Haoji noticed anomalies and frowned. A feeling of palpitations, constantly amplifying in their hearts. I just know that no matter how they release their magic power to spread around, they can't feel where this feeling of consciousness came from. I only know that it must be related to sword warriors. And Yuding Supreme, it is an instant change of face. The Emperor Diary and the Emperor Haoji did not know what was going on, but how could he not know who had witnessed Taro Supreme dominating the universe in person? This is simply one of the 5 unique skills that Tai Luo Supreme dominated the universe. Kendo magical power, dusk. At that time, Tai Luo Supreme used the evening sword to slaughter 3 major races with one sword, making the universe horrified. Originally, with the fall of Tai Luo Supreme, the sword-like magical power of this terrible crying ghost was also sealed. I didn't expect it to be opened again by Jian Wushuang today. Escape. Shu Yuding's eyes widened, and he burst into a drink at the Emperor of the Sun and the Emperor Haoji. At the same time, he stepped his right foot, and the dust in his hand instantly turned into a shuttle, allowing him to step under the foot and fly away. The speed was extremely fast. What? The brief encounter between the Emperor Diary and the Emperor Haoji was immediately understood in his heart, and it must be that the Supreme Master Yuding noticed the existence of danger, and this was the case. As a result, the two of them also performed magical powers and wanted to escape. Late. Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes. Under his feet, the void slowly sunken, forming a giant pit, and then began to spread out at a very fast speed. Rumble. This pit is like a giant beast with a wide open mouth. A suction that can't be resisted is transmitted from the center of this pit. Countless stars, countless galaxies, everything suspended in the universe have lost control, fell into this crater, and died silently. The night will be replaced by the dawn, and the sun will fall into the arms of the night. The middle process is dusk. His tilde. I have already shot 1,000 miles away from the great Emperor of the Sun to see this scene, and suddenly the scalp became numb, and his liver and gallbladder were cold. Next moment, stopping his original sprinting motion, the huge suction from the pit that wiped out everything in the world is like an invisible arm, dragging him back. He obviously still keeps sprinting forward, but the whole person keeps retreating and then falling, until it fell into the entire pit. It wasn't just him, but also Prince Haoji, who watched the war a little closer, fell into one after another. It's not over yet. Including the Yuding Supreme who first reacted, and the farthest flew away, was also dragged back and fell into the pit in the unwilling roar. No. Sword warriors, I will not intervene in this matter, you let me go. When Zun was about to fall into the pit, Yuding Supreme stared at Jian Wushuang and said, "Late." Wu Jianshou shook his head, his eyebrows were cold, then his lips opened slightly and he spit out a word. Buried. Chapter 44-24. Burial. The sword with no pair of feet is empty, with both hands quickly stamping, coldly drinking. When this sentence fell, the pit, like a black hole in the desert, began to collapse quickly. Reaching the point where Jian Wushuang is now, Kendo magical power is no longer tied to swordplay. In the universe, a loud noise was heard. First, the stars that were swallowed into the pit began to smash and annihilate one by one, turning them into nothingness, and then, the weakest Prince Hao Ji was squeezed by heaven and earth, and the body collapsed and shattered instantly. "My father saves me, Tilda." Shouting in horror, Prince Hao Ji shouted. On the verge of death, the Prince Hao Ji was extinct in form and spirit, leaving only his tragic sounds echoing in the universe. "Hao Ji, my son." For a moment, the Emperor of the Great Sun was about to crack and his eyes opened. After the Emperor Shao was beheaded and killed by Jian Wushuang in the ancient Road of the Sky, the Emperor Hao Ji was the last effort of the Emperor Dari, and he was the heir to the Emperor. Even if there is no such thing as Jian Wushuang, the Emperor of the Sun is ready to launch the Emperor Hao Ji as the Emperor at the ceremony. His love for Hao Ji, even less Emperor. Now, in the presence of his prince, Prince Hao Ji died in the hands of Jian Wushuang. The last words of help of Prince Hao Ji, like a sharp knife, poked into his heart. He is a emperor, he is the top and supreme, he is in the universe, and is in charge of thousands of life and death. But he is even more a father. At this moment, the Emperor Hao Ji dies in front of him, and the Emperor of the Sun is crazy. Sword unparalleled, Yuit. The Emperor Dari raised his head, and through the huge pit, he looked at Xiong Zhenshuang, and the resentment in his eyes condensed to the extreme. "It looks like you're in pain." Ji Jian looked at him with no expression on both sides, and a corner of indifference radiated from the corner of his mouth. "Don't worry, you will be reunited with your son soon." The collapse speed of the pits has become faster. There is a devastating force formed by sword gas, which is constantly harvesting vitality in the pit. Evening twilight, everything withered. "I have fallen into this night forever." This is the true meaning of the evening sword move. Howling. Howling. The Emperor Dari is running supreme divine power, resisting the offensive brought by the evening sword move, and roaring constantly. I was stunned by him, and it was like a raging atmosphere. It was quickly annihilating, and it was also expensive to be the top 10 universe gods, constantly opening cracks and leaking air. 10 breaths passed. The body of the Emperor Dari finally began to explode inch by inch, and in the end only one skull remained, staring at the sword unparalleled. "Sword unparalleled, you must not die of the king's curse. You go to Huangquan as you go up and down. My king curses you." He did not wait for him to finish, and the head of the Emperor Dari exploded like a cracked watermelon. The vitality belonging to the Emperor of the Great Sun disappeared. At this moment, there was still a rumbling boom in the pit, but everyone watching the battle in the distance seemed to be deaf. Looking at this scene blankly, his mouth could be stuffed with an egg. It wasn't long before someone trembled with his lips. "Big Great Sun Emperor, how did a generation of magpies fall like this? Big Sun Emperor, but in the universe, the little one who stood at the peak, died like this in a sword without hands. The Emperor Shao died, the Emperor Haoji died, and the Emperor Dari died. I'm afraid that in the future, there will be no place in the universe for the great Di God Kingdom. It's terrible. How strong is Jian Wushuang?" Countless people said in shock. They turned to look at Jian Wushuang, with only deep awe in their eyes. Her evening sword moves did not end, but continued. Because there is one person who is still supporting, that is Yuding Supreme. Inside the pit, a blast of destruction slammed into Yuding Supreme. While Yuding Supreme sat cross-legged in the void, the dusting silver wire in his hand spread rapidly and then grew like an eggshell, and wrapped Yuding Supreme in it. No matter how violent bombing of the sword energy at dusk, he stood still. Jian Wushuang, this move is really powerful, but unfortunately, it is still the same sentence, you have done too much for me, and you cannot use the combat power that this move deserves, otherwise, one face-to-face will be beheaded. Qi Yuding shook his head with pity and then shook his head, then said, Sword unparalleled, now that the great Emperor of the Sun is dead, and your resentment has been reported, why not let this seat go out? Is it possible that you have been consuming here with this seat all the time? When Zun said here, The corner of Yuding Supreme's mouth evoked a slight meaning. There is no expression on both sides of the sword, and I have to say that this Yuding Supreme is really powerful. Even at dusk, he can't completely kill it. I was silent for a while. Jian Wushuang said, Yuding, do you remember what I said before? Okay. After hearing the words, Yuding Supreme squinted his eyes and asked, what is it? Wu Jianshou glanced at him lightly, and calmly replied, I once said that if you block me, I will kill you. Do you think I'm joking with you? Boom. Suddenly, the deep pit that killed countless lives disappeared. Taro's sword, reunited in the sword without hands. However, before waiting for Yuding Supreme's face to burst into joy, he was suddenly replaced by an unprecedented panic. Tara sword code, 4th style, 4 seasons. Wu Jian stared coldly at Yuding Supreme, and Moran opened his mouth. In a short time, the entire universe regenerates and changes. The entire star air temperature suddenly dropped by thousands of degrees. It is in all directions, blowing strong cold snow and icy miles of stars. For a moment, the world seemed to be in the middle of a cold winter. Countless snowflakes exuded a bitter coldness, falling from the air. Each snowflake is a season of sword spirit. This is the 4 seasons swordsmanship. Suddenly, Yuding Supreme was terrified. If Jian Wushuang used the dusk sword move before, he was just shocked, now he is scared. 4 seasons sword moves, seemingly unremarkable, far from the momentum of the first 3 swords, but no matter in terms of intention or power, it is far from being comparable to the first 3 sword. It can be said that from the beginning of the 4 seasons sword move, it is a huge watershed. The 4 seasons swordsmanship is like a needle hidden in cotton. A beautiful and delicate snowflake fell. Yuding Supreme raised the whisk in his hand, and just to stop it, he saw the snowflake and passed through the dust directly and silently, reflecting on his body. Suddenly, the place where his deity was touched by snowflakes was directly frozen, and even the divine power could not work. Ji Yuding's extreme complexion changed instantly, and he did not wait for him to change again. The 4 seasons sword move had changed again. Chapter 44-25. Boom tilde. A spring thunder blew. The 4 seasons sword moves suddenly regenerate and change, cold winter melts, and turns into a warm spring silent. Alas! The icy snow and cold snow gradually faded away, and what turned to be, was a drizzle of drizzle falling from the air. Long winter, warm spring, hot summer, cold autumn. The 4 major solar terms are the 4 sword meanings implied in the 4 seasons swordsmanship. It's obscure and complicated, it's profound, far beyond anyone's imagination. Nuanchuan is not the sword of the 4 seasons swordsmanship, but it is the most dangerous sword. Hunchan's solar terms, all things recover, beneath the peaceful surface, cruel killing and plundering are hidden. Rumble tilde. In the universe, at this moment it seems that the entire starry sky has disappeared. There are continuous spring rains falling and spring thunder roaring constantly, as if playing a song of destruction. Zun Yuding held the whisk in his hand, and stared at the world around him. The rain falling in the sky is sword air, and the thunderous thunder is sword air. Even the gentle wind that blows is sword air. Sword after sword, dense, filling the world. Avoidance is inevitable, ambush on all sides. For just half a column of incense, the Yuding Supreme Deity was severed by countless sword chi, and a blood rain fell like a blood man. His hair was loose, his robe was thin, and the wolf was trembling to the extreme. Sword unparalleled, do you really want to endure with this seat? Shu Yuding looked at the footsteps to the void, like the sword master of the heaven and earth, cold voice. Wu Jianshou glanced at him lightly, and replied, if you can survive this sword, how can I spare you my life? Okay. Jian Wushuang, this is the reason you were not afraid of this seat before, right? But you must forget that not only you in the world have a killer, but this jade also has it. Qi Yuding took a deep breath, and there was no slight contempt in his eyes, and he turned into an incomparable dignity. Next moment. Speak him word by word, Supreme God, Joding Township. Break me. Suddenly, Yuding's supreme body was flowing, and countless avenues of truth evolved in his eyes. He had a very strong breath, soaring again and again. In the void, 9 giant tripods are suddenly gathered. These 9 giant tripods are quaint and magnificent. As soon as Fang appears, it is like a Dinghai god who suppresses the sea of anger. Continuously puffing the cold mang, turned into the sword Qi eroded by the spring rain, at the same time collapsed a whole 100,000. This supernatural power is the most powerful extinction of Yuding Supreme that relies on the universe. He once used this supernatural power to make a half-step invincible Supreme and instantly kill. The name of his Supreme Jade Tripod comes from this magical power. Click. The void seems to be unable to bear these 9 giant tripods, crushed inch by inch. Burning. Qi Yuding Supreme exhausted his whole body strength and sang. Suddenly, these 9 giant tripods were like Shengyuan Shenlong, dripping and spinning, soaring into the sky. These 9 giant tripods are linked to each other, and the tripod within the tripod continues to muffle, as if the drums of war in the ancient heavens were beaten, making people deaf. Boom. The next breath, 9 giant tripods exploded at the same time. A majestic force that could not be described with any force was blown away, turned into a shock wave that destroyed the world, and swept the quartet. Under this force, whether it is the continuous spring rain, or the spring wind that stirs up or down, or the spring thunder that thunders. Crush all at the same time. Good skill. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, half a step back, his fists were all pulled out, his fist photographed the bright golden light, and the purple Sichuan word in the eyebrow was even more dazzling. Come. Yang Jian Wushuang's fists were smashed out fiercely, and the shock wave that swept at him continued to crash. Every punch is sinking to the extreme with great power to hit the planet. Wu Jian Wushuang is like a warrior on the coast to meet the tide. No matter how this shock wave slaps, he will break it one by one. And the 4 seasons sword spirit destroyed by Yuding Supreme did not dissipate with it, but began to evolve again. Winter to spring, spring to summer, summer to autumn, autumn to winter. 4 solar terms, endless, and cycle each other. Once the 4 seasons of sword Qi are generated, it will be to the death. This is also the strongest point of the 4 seasons sword energy. It is not like dawn and dusk, it will explode all attack powers at the same time, causing a devastating blow. It is like a grinding disc, which moves slowly, but constantly destroys the vitality of the enemy. After a few breaths, a round of scorching sun rises, and a scorching and violent force rushes towards the face. The entire starry sky began to become red. Yu Ding was supreme, and the whole body began to ignite white smoke, just like withered flowers and bones. The skin gradually became dry and dull, and his hair fell down. The whole person, as if to be roasted and dried, the blood began to boil, and then smoked. A big terror between life and death, madness breeds in his heart. Sword unparalleled, stop. I confess to you wrong. I shouldn't get involved in your affairs with the Emperor of the Sun. Let me go. From now on, wherever your sword is unparalleled, my Yuding retreats and respects you as a god. Let me go. At this moment, all the pride and dignity of Yuding Supreme is shattered, leaving only the fear of death and the desire for survival. He looked at Jian Wushuang in despair, his face full of begging. Want to ask for mercy now? Jian Wushuang glanced at him lightly and shook his head. I'm sorry, my sword Wushuang has always reported this to me. If you want my life, I will kill it. Dead. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stretched out 5 fingers forward towards the void and grabbed it fiercely. Suddenly, the scorching sun, which was transformed into a sword by the 4 seasons, burst into flames and crashed into Yuding Supreme. Instantly Yuding's supreme face is earthy and pale. In a blast of earth-shattering thunder, the Tai Luo Excalibur was severely inserted into the chest of Yuding Supreme. Immediately, Yuding Supreme disappeared. Half-step invincible Supreme Yuding, fall. Hit him. He is the highest person who died in the sword without hands. This 4-season world evolved from the Tara Excalibur gradually collapsed. The Tara Excalibur turned into a golden light, flew back, shot into the sword without hands, and was held by the sword. The whole starry sky turned into a dead silence. Wu Jian Wushuo held the Taro Excalibur, a feeling of hard-working connection, uploaded from the Taro Excalibur. Get stronger. Yang Jian Wushuang faintly felt that after the Tai Luo divine sword slayed Yuding Supreme, it seemed to become stronger by 1 point, becoming even more enchanting. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang remembered what Wu Zhenxian said to him at the Feast of Life Shrine. The horror soldiers of Jijidao, their horrors, are constantly becoming stronger. Tara sword is the one that the main palm kills among the 7-armed ancestors. Killing. Can Taro sword become stronger? Wu Zhen's eyes flashed a little thoughtfulness, and he immediately pulled a sword flower, inserted the Tara Excalibur into the Tara sword sheath, and let the scabbard warm the Tara Excalibur. 9 Heavenly Emperors. Chapter 44-26. In the void, there was silence. Only the strong wind kept echoing. I have retreated to the distant spectators, watching this scene blankly, only to feel cold all over the body. The prince, Hao Ji, died. The Emperor Dairi died. Even in the universe, Yuding Supreme, who is half-step invincible Supreme Master, is also buried in the hands of Jian Wushuang. He could not use any words to describe the terror in their hearts. Originally, Jian Wushuang once dominated and killed the Supreme, it was shocking enough, but now, Jian Wushuang has begun the Supreme practice and beheaded and defeated. This is too shocking. In the universe, these things have never happened before. Whether it's the first day of the 100,000 chaos before the Chaos Era, or the 9 Calamity Kings, who were also considered to be wicked Tianjiao before, it is far less than the current sword unparalleled, 1,000 miles away. The universe seems to be really changing. The beginner Supreme cuts and kills the half-step invincible Supreme. If I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't believe it. The first day of eternity is proud. Countless years from now, the entire universe will remember a name, that is, swordsman. Legend. Jian Wushuang is a legend. From today onwards, there will be one more person on the top of the universe, and that is swordless. Invincible Supreme is not out. I'm afraid Jian Wushuang is enough to sweep the universe. Countless people spoke. At this moment, they looked at Jian Wushuang, who had black hair in the distance, and their eyes filled with strong worship and fanaticism. I even have a monk, dazzled and venomous. If it had not been rumored in the universe, Jian Wushuang had already married, and I was anxious to rush up on the spot and make a wife for Jian Wushuang. No one who is present will be a fool. Jian Wushuang is powerful and amazingly talented. No one dare to say how amazing Jian Huang's future achievements will be. If it wasn't for the existence of the dragon race, Daewu Temple, etc., which are hostile to Jian Wushuang, I do not know how many people in the universe want to go online with Jian Wushuang and form a good destiny. Now, after Jian Wushuang slashed half-step invincible Supreme Yuding, these people are suddenly brave, no more scruples. Well, swords have been practiced for more than 700,000 years without both sides, and they have the power to slay half-step invincible supremacy. If sword warriors are practiced for more than 700,000 years, this dragon may not be their opponent. The dragons have been comfortable for too long, and they think they are too long. It is time for people to teach them. They are not the masters of the universe. The dragons are powerful, but they are nothing more than that. A few surviving second-generation dragons can only rest on their lives. Although the remaining 3 generations of dragons are strong, they may not have the opportunity to lift them until the swordsman Wushan has fully grown up. I am convinced that after 10,000 chaos ages, this universe will belong to swordless. Countless people's eyes were burning and their tone was firm. Immediately, they looked at each other and walked towards Jian Wushuang, planning to form a good destiny. Among them, the guests who came to participate in the ceremony of the ancestral ritual of the Emperor of the Sun were running fast, fearing that Jian Wushuang would be angry at them, and he had to explain it quickly. Wushuang Supreme, the supreme promise of the golden sword of the promise, I would like to say hello. Wushuang Supreme, the owner of the island of Shawaro, hereby apologizes to you for paying tribute. It is really my ancestor who has an old age with him. For a moment, all kinds of sounds to please Jian Wushuang sounded one after another. These people, without exception, are all middle level or above. However, at the moment, they are facing various swordsman flatterers, and they are not afraid of being disrespectful. If this scene falls in the eyes of an unsuspecting person, it will definitely make people downcast. Jian Wushuang's expression was dull. These people were just the grass on both sides of the wind. It is the best to see the wind to make the rudder. Fortunately, today, they have won. If they lose, these people will definitely be cut by Yuding Supreme and others. After killing, spit and spit. He didn't bother them too much. Jian Wushuang took a right-hand shot into the void, and suddenly the great Emperor of the Sun and Yuding's supreme Chenkuan ring shot at him. After grabbing the Chenkuan ring, Jian Wushuang's divine power swept slightly inside, and his expression couldn't help moving. The wealth of these two men is really scary, even when the supreme thunder has not yet begun, and when many of his treasures have not yet exploded, they are far worse than these two. These two people are afraid of relying on their own cultivation to become strong and others a lot of opportunities. Wu Jianshou snorted coldly, then shook his head immediately, closed the two Chenkuan and turned towards the great sun god kingdom. The sword warrior turned into a sword orn, across the sky suddenly, like a meteor passing, and fell into the country of the great god of the sun. Day City King. Many people who did not rush out of the starry sky to watch, and the royal children who stayed behind in the great sun god kingdom, are discussing with each other. They have a relaxed face, a relaxed attitude, and even a leisurely cup of tea. It seems that they have no fear of losing the Emperor Dairi and others. Queen, His Majesty the Emperor, they haven't returned for so long, won't it happen? A guard of the great sun god kingdom said with some anxiety in his eyes. The queen was a beautiful woman, and when she heard that she put down her teacup, she said arbitrarily, Jian Wushuang's thief is only an elementary supreme cultivation, how can he be your majesty's opponent? Not to mention, this time, there is Yuding Supreme to assist. If Ren Jianshou has the ability to pass through the sky, he will bow down this time. The guard couldn't help hesitating, and said, Queen, for the sake of insurance, I think we should go and see. When Queen Dei heard her words frown, she was about to rebuke. At this time, with a loud bang, a low voice exploded like a thunder and rolled down. The Emperor Dairi is dead, and other people of the Dairi royal family are also guilty. Although they will not die, they should be cut and cultivated to serve the purpose. The figure of Wu Jian's unparalleled united in the void. Instantly, countless children of the family of the king of the big sun god split their hearts, and couldn't believe it. The queen of the big sun was overwhelmed in an instant. How can it be? How could your majesty be defeated? Wu Jianshu's expression was indifferent, his black hair fluttered, and he stood proudly in the void. He glanced down at Dei King City, and immediately shook his head, splitting it with a sword. This sword deprives you of cultivation. Boom. Suddenly, the sword was split, and it seemed to cause no harm, not even a single tree or a tree, but it was directly in the invisible, and it was chopped on everyone who was in blood with the Emperor of the Sun. This sword is a variant of Yongye sword. He has the power to deprive everything. Shinai is a little magical power that Jian Wushuang promoted after he realized the sword intention of Taro Supreme are. My cultivation. What's going on? Why is my cultivation fading? No. For a moment, the Japanese palace was screaming again and again. Countless people feel their fast-removing cultivation, and their faces are terrified. Those who came with the sword unparalleled, noticed this scene, even more shocked, cold all over. Ejian cut to repair. What kind of ghost and means? You know, the Dari royal family has a total of nearly 10,000 people. Wu Jianwusu looked at them lightly, and split the four swords again. These four swords rise into the sky, and then hide in the void. From today to the next 90 million years, all people of the royal family of Dairi shall not step out of the palace of Dairi. Dalian Imperial Palace, closed for thousands of years. The four sword orns hidden in the void, the sword tip turned, and will kill anyone who dares to step out of the big Japanese palace. Instantly, countless people of the Dari royal family looked desperate, as pale as earth. Wu Jianwushuang said no more. As soon as he stepped, he turned into a ray of light. Chapter 44-27. Jian Wushuang left. He left only a messy great sun god kingdom, and countless disciples of the great sun emperor. When he entered the city was full of joy and everyone smiled. After he was out of the city, the ruins of the wall were broken, and a piece of white clothing was ravaged. At this moment, countless monks who are still staying in the Dari King city, watching the Dari King family who was sealed by the four swordsmen, suppressed their hearts for a while. They know that the great sun god kingdom is over. 90 million years. For a total of 90 million years, you must not step out of the palace. What is this concept? For the supreme supremacy of Gongsun, although 90 million years is long, but it is not unacceptable, but for the children of the Dane royal family who have been deprived and degraded to mortals, 90 million years are countless. Reincarnation, thousands of generations. This represents them. They must never stand up forever. Do not. Countless children of the royal family of Dari Kingdom in Dari Imperial Palace all showed despair, and the Queen of Dari fainted to the ground instantly. After a high king, I ordered the world not to dare not, and to become a mortal who is going to experience old age, sickness and death, which is even more painful than killing her. Among them, the children of the Dane royal family who are fortunate to try to practice, are shocked to find that a prohibition has been planted in their bodies, blocking all their paths of practice. It's really over. At this moment, countless people fell to the ground, looking desperate and desperate. A few days later, Wu Shou Wu Shuang in the Great Sun Goddess country, cutting the Great Sun God Emperor, the most supreme thing in Yuding, spread throughout the universe at a very fast speed. In a hurry, there was an uproar in the universe, with thousands of people shaking and the world sensation. The sensation caused this time is far more than anything in the past, even enough to compare the war at the gate of the Temple of Life. The Emperor Dari died in the sword without hands. It was nothing. Although they were surprised, they had not reached the point of horror. The impact of Zhu Yuding's extreme fall is too big. Zun Yuding is supreme, half-step invincible supreme cultivation, famous in thousands of prehistoric times, who survived the war of catastrophe. Of course, at the time of the Holocaust, Yuding Supreme was still weak, but the Supreme did not officially participate in the Holocaust, but Rao is so, he is also an ancient power. It is such a powerful hand and eye that has died in the swordless hands that have practiced for more than 700,000 years. This is really shocking. Sword unparalleled gifted strength, ancient times have not. I have the longest rank in the universe, my lips tremble, my eyes shook. Today's sword is unparalleled, as long as the invincible is invincible, I'm afraid that no one can stop him in this universe. After someone took a deep breath, he said so. Fast. Pass this edict, from now on, all my disciples of Shenzong will meet Zhen Wushuang to evade the three houses, even when wandering the universe, see other disciples of life in the palace, you must be polite. 3 points, do not offend. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will cause me a terrible disaster. There is one master, who is regarded as a hegemonic figure in the universe. 3 orders were issued on the same day, each of which is about swordsmen. There are also Zhongsho who once put words in the universe, who must die under the oppression of the dragons, or who had participated in the strangulation of Zhenshou Shuang, either announced an apology directly in the universe or sent someone to the Temple of Life to apologize and apologize. Some of them are immortal Dharma, some are ancient holy places, and some are a kingdom of gods. They are usually giants in the universe, and they control the existence of life and death, but at this moment, they all showed their favor to Zhen Wushuang. From the moment when Zhen Wushuang beheaded Yuding Supreme, Zhen Wushuang is no longer the junior bully in their eyes, but another giant arm rising from the universe, enough to set foot on the top of the universe. And those forces that have a good match with the sword, such as Joding Pavilion, Shinkong Zhenzong, Joshing Holy Land, Molu Clan, and so on, also announced that the universe, they will reach an alliance with the Temple of Life, and become all the fans behind Zhen Wushuang. At this moment, countless people were shocked to discover that, without knowing it, Zhen Wushuang is already a lame person who can stir up the cosmic situation and beat the power of the universe for 9 days. Countless top forces, tied to him. As a person, there are still people in the universe who watch from the wall. Although they no longer say some words of derogatory sword Wushuang, they are sneering in their hearts. Sooner or later Jian Wushuang will still die in the hands of the dragons. Anyway, the situation in the universe changed all the time, all kinds of speeches emerged endlessly, and the word sword warriors occupied all the topics of the universe. In the universe, a lonely starry sky. A cosmic boat is constantly breaking through the waves and galloping fast. Jian Wushuang did not stay in the spacecraft, but stood on the deck of the spacecraft with a negative hand, allowing him to be brushed by the fierce wind. He had black hair and was screamed. Yang Jianwu looked ahead, his eyes blinked constantly. From the perspective of this battle, my strength should be the ultimate. Wu Jian's eyes filled with speculation, constantly recalling the details of the fight with Yuding Supreme. In that battle, except for the last move of Tai Luo Jian Dian, which was at the bottom of the box, Taro was not used. He almost came out. As for other magical powers, similar to the chaotic power in the Wuding Chaoding, etc., even if it is useful, it will not affect the result. The Tai Luo sword is the card that Jian Wushuang prepared for himself, and if the dragons really come out from the strongest group of strong men to hang him, this whole card that has never been used may be a critical moment. Keep him alive. Unless forced, Jian Wushuang will not use the Taro sword trick. Even with this sword trick, even now, he hasn't fully comprehended it. Once he used it, he didn't know what the consequences would be. Out of control too much. But even so, I have a self-protection in the universe. Thought of this, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. At this moment, neither side of the sword thinks that he finally has a bit of self-protection in the universe. Today, he can't say that he can sweep the universe, but those who are hunted down can only hide in Tibet. I'm afraid it's gone forever. After a short while, Jian Wushuang opened the bamboo tube handed to him by the Supreme Master of Blood. Among them, the third page is marked as Kaiyang Kingdom, Kaiyang Emperor, half-step invincible supreme, famous in the 3000 Chaos prehistoric era. Jian Wushuang pedaled the universe boat, and continued to march towards the Kaiyang God Kingdom. Kaiyang Divine Kingdom is his third goal. Wonderful book house. Chapter 44-28. At the same time, Jian Wushuang was driving the cosmic boat, and constantly driving towards the Kaiyang God Kingdom. Many eyes in the universe are also placed on the Kaiyang Divine Kingdom. Through the first 2 times of Jian Wushuang's crusade, they can be regarded as coming. Jian Wushuang went all the way to the door to kill the target, from weak to strong. For example, the first Dead Blood Temple Master was the weakest and weakest of the 6 forces that had stabbed sword unparalleled in the first place. The remaining 5 forces, with the exception of the great Japanese Emperor, who has already died and died, have the weakest strength to reach the half-step invincible supreme. Kaiyang Divine Kingdom, it's over. Countless people shook their heads. Kaiyang God Domestic. Father, what shall we do now? Your Majesty, you speak. There was chaos in the palace hall. Countless leaders and ministers of the Kaiyang Divine Kingdom, including the descendants of the Kaiyang Divine King, looked desperately, sitting on the throne of the Kaiyang Divine King. As soon as the news that the sword defeated the great Emperor of the Sun and Yuding Supreme was released, it was like a thunderbolt on a sunny day, and it blew up on everyone's head in Kaiyang God Kingdom. Even the top and supreme great Japanese Emperor and the half-step invincible Yuding Supreme are dead. What is their resistance to the Kaiyang Kingdom? At this moment, countless people in Kaiyang God's heart are filled with endless remorse. Why? Why do you want to provoke Jian Wushuang? Okay, don't bother. Kaiyang Shenjun has a square face, and the whole person is full of self-anger. He patted the armrest of the throne heavily, glanced coldly at the hall, and was frightened by the name Jian Wushuang as if shaking a quail, and snorted coldly. At the beginning, I was going to flatten the Temple of Life. Strangling the sword is unparalleled. It is the most powerful of your clamor. I want to share a cup of tea after I level the Temple of Life. Now the sword is infinitely powerful, and everyone has not come yet. You are so frightened that everyone is in danger, and everyone is ashamed. As soon as this remark came to an end, the original mess was restored to a quiet place. Everyone present at the meeting bowed their heads and did not dare to look directly at the Kaiyang God. Where would they want to know? The sword master Wu Shuang, who dominated the realm, had a leap and had the supreme practice of beheading and invincible. Okay, all of them will stop a bit. The sword is unparalleled, and this seat will naturally find a solution. Kaiyang Shenjun took a deep breath and said Shensheng. Report. At this moment, I will hurriedly blast from outside the hall and step into the hall. Your Majesty, Jian Wushuang is already far away from Kaiyang Divine Kingdom, less than 3-star domains, and will arrive today. They will look up at the Kaiyang god, his face panicked. Is it so fast? Kaiyang Shenjun's pupils shrink and become slightly discolored. Immediately, he got up and stood up, looked around at the people in the hall deeply, and said coldly, "You are here to take it with you. What is the punishment of the sword unparalleled? Just one person bears it." In the complex eyes of everyone in the hall, Kaiyang God stood up and walked towards the outside of Kaiyang Palace. He hadn't waited for him to leave the palace, and a low, indifferent voice exploded loudly over the whole city. Sword of Life Jingu sword is unique. Come here to visit the kingdom of Kaiyang. As soon as this remark came to an end, it was as if a heavy bomb had been dropped in the great sun god. Countless people's faces changed greatly, their faces turned pale, their bodies shook like sieve bran. Here comes, Jian Wushuang comes. The discoloration in the eyes of Kaiyang Shenjun flashed for a moment, and then he recovered his calmness, swept up in one step, and landed on the wall of Kaiyang King City. After all, he is the man who stands at the top of the universe. He has been accustomed to the undulating waves for a long time. Although Jian Shuangshuang is strong, he is not so scary as to smell him. Jian Wushuang, I have been waiting for you for a long time. Kaiyang Shenjun stared at Jian Wushuang with complex eyes, and said with a deep voice. He didn't call this seat anymore. It means that he put the sword Wushuang in a position equal to him. Oh! The sword came from both heaven and earth, hunting in black, squinting at his eyes and wondering, wait for a long time? Kaiyang Shenjun nodded his head and replied, the sword is unparalleled. The world is the strongest. You were humble at first, but I deceived you to conform to heaven. Now you are better than me, and I have nothing to come to anything can be said, willing to admit punishment. Oh, you are frank. Wu Jianshou carried his hands and looked at him with a smile. Kaiyang Shenjun looked at Jian Wushuang and did not express his attitude. There was a struggle on his face, and he bit his teeth. Sword unparalleled. No matter how angry and murderous you may be, I am the one who bears the burden of Kaiyang. Let me go, and leave a little room for me. After saying that, seeing Jian Wushuang not talking, he took a deep breath, and seemed to have made a decision, and said again, sword unparalleled. As long as you don't want to be angry with my descendants of Kaiyang, strip them of cultivation, I will be willing to self-discipline. As soon as this remark came to an end, many people in Kaiyang who watched this scene in the Kaiyang Royal Palace were breathing stagnation. They didn't expect that Kaiyang God would be willing to make his own decision for them. Even the sword unparalleled, all brow slightly. Practice all the way, the more you get to the back, the more selfish and ruthless you are. As long as you can build the avenue, most people do NT talk about blood relationship, even parents and relatives can testify. Shu can be like the Kaiyang who is willing to sacrifice himself in order to preserve his blood. Few ancient times. But when he turned his head, Jian Wushuang also wanted to understand. I am afraid that this Kaiyang Shenjun knows that it is impossible to escape today and is doomed to fall, then it is better to let his fall to exchange some chips and die. More valuable. He groaned for a moment or two. Jian Wushuang looked at the Kaiyang god, and replied slightly, yes. Hearing this, Kaiyang Shenjun was relieved, but glanced at Jian Wushuang gratefully. Thank you. Then, the Kaiyang monarch turned his head suddenly, looking at the many descendants of the sorrowful people in the imperial city of Kaiyang. Chuanyin scolded. Remember, this place is falling behind today. You must act in a low-key manner, be safe and secure yourself, withdraw from the depths of the universe. Practice well, you must not mention a word of revenge. You guys, understand? The voice of the Kaiyang gods, like a bang and drink, exploded in the minds of every descendant. These grandchildren heard the words, and immediately realized that the death of the Kaiyang had been settled. No, Kaiyang Shenjun no longer cares about them, but looks at Xiong Jian Wushuang, grinning with a grin, sword unparalleled, remember your promise, let them go. The reason that I planted on the day, I taste the fruit today. Im Kai Yang, go too. Huh. He stretched out his hand and patted his brow with one palm. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.